Hi everyone, Neil back again with Global Supply Chain Essentials, and I want to talk about a very important topic that we covered in the middle of this semester, and that is how do you drive innovation and change in the supply chain. Also, in a related video, I want to talk about what can we learn from startups and how they are able to manage their IP risk, given that they don't have the big guns like lawyers and resources to protect their assets. Let's get on with the first part. How do we drive innovation and change in the supply chain? I spoke to many consultants over the last 5-6 years, and I documented the key things that they have told me about things they do when they go into a organization to look at its global supply chain. When I talked to Big Ideas Consulting, the big idea was to think about how to win the heart and mind of suppliers. But before they even do that, what was very important was that they focused on consolidation of the supply chain. Instead of thinking about how can we change suppliers, let's think about, okay, do we need the 150 suppliers that we are sourcing from? Do we need the 200 suppliers that we are sourcing from? Can we cut that down to 70 or 80? Once we cut it down to 70 or 80, then we can start to focus on the relationships with the remaining suppliers. When I talked to Weave, and one of the major consultants of Weave, Fred Lemoyne, he was very big in thinking about the strategic vision of the owner and their perceived opportunity costs associated with the use of resources. For example, spending it on machinery for the long-term growth and benefit of the factory versus spending it on property, which in these days is kind of a sure thing. The other thing was that factory owners tended to underestimate how important it was to have ongoing skill development and having skilled employees on your factory floor. When I spoke to Tell Apparel, they had the same ideas about consolidating the supply chain. A further thing that I learned from the consultants at Weave was thinking about the big trends overall when we enter into the supply chain and trying to improve the supply chain. And that was the total cost of ownership, the functionality costs, and production planning. Let me look at 3 of these things in turn. Total cost of ownership is thinking beyond the price and thinking of other factors that enables your supply chain to be sustainable over time. It's really nice to get a price in the short term, only to find out the supply goes out of business 6-9 months later. You want to enter into a relationship thinking that it's going to be sustainable over the long term. Functionality costs is another thing that is a consistent trend in the automation of supply chains, and that is thinking about what is relevant to the customer. So if I were to grab this smartphone, and unlike the approach that Steve Jobs took, that is, we want all the metal inside the iPhone to be shiny and clean and clear, generally the customer does not see the inside of your phone. So the focus on functionality costs is to match the costs of materials and assembly operations with the functionality that customers value. So customers value a shiny outside of the phone. They don't necessarily value the shiny inside because they're not going to see the inside. So you're not going to spend resources making the inside of your phone shiny. And that's another big trend that is persistent in advanced supply chains around the world. The final trend is production planning, and now of course that's gone pear-shaped because of COVID and border closures and gyrations in shipping supply and demand. Ships are going one way. It's been like ships have been going one way for the last 12 months now. They're not they don't seem to be coming back to get more containers to take from Asia back to the US. But production planning, that is, if you're making all types of coloured socks during the year, but only the red, white and blue socks are in high demand over Christmas, why would you use capacity to make black socks for the Christmas market? You can make black socks for other times of the year. So you can think a little bit more smartly about your production planning. So total cost of ownership, functionality costs and production planning were big operational trends going forward in trying to help make your supply chain more efficient, and that is beyond consolidating the supply chain. When I talked to China manufacturing consultants, the big thing was the short-term mindset of the owner, again echoing what the Weave consultants told me, the short-term mindset of the owner, plus the awareness of skills and leadership factors. When we talk about the question of, okay, in the next month we have to cut costs. We have to cut costs. What can we do immediately to cut costs? Number one, cut inventory. Okay. Number two, cut office staff, administration staff. Number three, start process improvement. Go down to the factory line and figure out how to change things to minimize the rejects that are happening at the end of your assembly line. Go to your QC chart to see where the problems are and work backwards to find out if you can solve some of those problems operationally, procedure-wise, so therefore on further iterations of production runs in days and weeks to come, you're going to get less rejects at the end of the supply chain. Again, summarizing, mindset, appreciation of the skills that are needed on the factory floor, leadership are very important, and thinking about cost cutting. I put these into a nice diagram here. Now, of course, it's like an onion, and for most organizational change challenges, ultimately, if you cannot get to the middle of the onion, the change will not be enduring, and any change you want to do, you want to make it sustainable and enduring. So what's on the core of the onion? It's what I said earlier. It's that short-term mindset of the owner. It's their perceived opportunity costs, investing in machinery versus property. It's their appreciation of the need to have skilled labor and upgrading of the skills of your workforce in the production line. On the broader rims of the onion, we can see the efficiency innovation, and as I mentioned earlier, in the short term, how do we cut costs? Cut inventory, cut office staff, okay, process improvement. And then broadly, initially, and this is what we learned from Big Ideas Consulting, that is, you want to cut down the number of suppliers, consolidate the number of suppliers that you have. These are initial things you start. Then you can work on efficiency innovation. Ultimately, in order to get change management to stick in your supply chain, you've got to get into the hearts and minds of your supplier, the owner. Find out what is their mindset. What is their mindset about making the best product in the world? What is their mindset about a perceived investment of resources to make their operations more sustainable over time? What is their mindset towards the skills of their operators working on their factory floor, and whether they can invest more in developing those skills? So there's the first part I want to take you through today, and welcome to Supply Chain Essentials, because we are always trying to improve and innovate in the organization, but at the same time in the global supply chain as well. This is O'Connor, Supply Chain Essentials. See you in the next video.